Hello. Okay, so I'm doing my reading here at Midwest Witchery today. I figured I would just do my brief videos. So I'm just going to shuffle them up and then we're just going to kind of go with it again. I kind of had a really weird shuffle earlier, so I had to kind of like walk away, come back, and focus again because, yeah, I think we don't need you guys to like just pretty much see what you already hear in the news in your Facebook feeds or whatever feeds you're watching right now. So let's focus on more metaphysical. Okay. Alright, so we have the Queen of Pentacles here. And what that's representing is actually, well, understanding that some things had to actually happen so that you could actually break down these barriers and really have something actually more tangible to hold on to. The one thing about the Pentacles is they represent Earth. They represent growth. And what this is also talking at this point is that everything that's reflecting right there is actually a part of that. It plays a significant role in these things. So it is a situation where things are actually on the horizon of getting better, but the work is actually going to sometimes feel like it's not actually producing the results that we're actually trying to get in that spiritual way. When you're trying to go through all of these things all at once, you have to understand that there is a process. It comes in solidarity, but it doesn't always come from just that separate way of thinking. It is a collective way of thinking, and people finally actually working together to produce the results of the King of Pentacles. So what that represents is knowing that you actually have enough. And then once you actually start to work and build with those others around you, you start to end up realizing that things are replenishing. A lot like that dream I was actually talking about earlier, which if some of you are not on my Facebook, which not very many people really are, you probably wouldn't have heard it, but it does actually talk about that dream that I was having about the other side and how it talks about replenishing and how it means that whatever we're bringing over here can feed over there. So it is actually holding a balance. It's very interesting when you look at it like that because that really talks about the evolution that finally came from the Hanged Man. The one thing about the Hanged Man is that it doesn't talk about execution so much as it talks about the evolution and understanding that there is actually more to what goes on in what we see. What you're seeing and you're understanding now is that it actually is hanging up the old ideas and finally actually giving yourself a chance to see the revelation with the sun. So, with revelation, that is a really interesting word that I like to use a lot because the thing is, it sounds like I'm talking about the revelations from the Bible, but no, it actually isn't. Revelation represents revealing. Even like the word apocalypse itself, it actually means to reveal what is hidden. So, while we're seeing an end of a world as we once knew, you see the beginning one, which we've been seeing for like the past 3 years. So, this next one coming up, what we actually end up seeing is actually the very thing that kept us afloat this entire time. Those very things that we actually thought that we could get away from for a second, we need to actually start going toward, because the one thing is, these areas where we try to actually handle some things, they're not going to be handled by just actually avoiding them. The Ten of Swords also talks about that same revelation, because so many people think the Ten of Swords is a bad one, but actually it's a card of protection. It is one of those where we actually understand that when we're taking the knives out of our back, we have an opportunity here to finally actually end up seeing that we don't have to actually choose any one or the other, that this is one where you can't always listen to what other people are telling you. Like I was talking about and typing about in my rebellion yesterday. We're doing something in that rebellious form, and getting yourself out of that loop is how you end up seeing what's really there. Not giving into that false light, but finally actually trusting your own self at this point. If people are going to try to sit here and take and take and take from you, it is you that needs to stand your ground. Kind of like this person who's obviously in royalty, giving up his crown to the other person. A transition of power. So when we look at it like that, you end up finally seeing the whole point of what's really going on here. The Eight of Cups reversed is not about the failure that came. It's actually about finally taking that new step into that new area of life. So, what we're understanding now is there's 3 other cards I want to pull from this other deck. we have the King of Cups here, and that represents, well, everything that we're trying to see here right now is actually finally pulling ourselves up in that regard by our own spirits and finally actually embracing that wholeness with ourselves. The thing is, we are them, they are us, so therefore it is just a reflection of what's going on over there is also going on over here. And what you end up seeing with Michael as well, it actually ends up coming out into a very interesting way because that's where things take on. It's no longer the war or the conflict. It's actually just finally end up realizing that you got yourself out of that without their help sometimes because, again, it was always you. And therefore, we have the Seven of Wands as well. And that is the area right here where it does actually give us that sense of modestness, but maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe it is actually liberation from all of those things. Maybe it actually is running to the very thing that people are telling you you should have some fear of, or actually even being something where you feel like you actually have to, well, walk around the edges or on eggshells. You can't do that. It's a situation where we've tried already in the past to try to make everything change in a world way, but we've realized that the thing is we can't. So therefore we have to change ourselves. We have to actually be the person that finally is there when people are ready to come to you. But you can't force it. You can't make them see. Just like I always say. And it is an area right there where I have been talking about the false light more and more. And the reason I've been doing that is really mainly because of the fact that, well, finally people are talking about that. People are finally in a place where they're comfortable to finally talk about the other side of spirituality. And it's not always going to be this love and light full of possibilities. The original reading that I had was the Three of Swords, the Nine of Swords, and the Tower reversed, along with a few other cards that just were not really very lovely. But what's also going in the world is it's not very lovely. But like I said in the beginning of this video, I don't think you need to actually hear me tell you that. All you got to do is watch what's going on around you. So that's an area right there where we do have to deal with some major turmoil, but we are also going to get through a lot of these other things. Even if it's not here on the other side, it does get a lot easier. So it is one of those situations where you finally have a different understanding. It's not always going to happen the way you expect it to, or sometimes the way you want it to, or as quick as you want it to, because time works differently on that other side. So we have to finally actually put that into consideration. Some of these things that seem so easy over there, in the places that we dream, well, are not so easy to actually comprehend over here because, well, we are so limited. And also, gravity and everything else just is not on our side here either. Let's just face it. But, you know, if I want to start sounding completely batshit, I'll just continue talking about my dreams. But at the same time, it is an area right here where those dreams are a lot more realistic than the reality that we've been seeing lately. I call it the Matrix because it's not like the Matrix like you see in TV. No, it's the religion, the cult belief, the political side of everything. Those are areas in which that keep you tied in and locked into things and make you feel trapped. And that causes, well, a sense of that isolation and burden. But everything else that I'm seeing is to give yourself a sense of freedom from all of those things and actually just pay attention to what is in your control. Because honestly, we try to pay attention to what is not in our control, and it always leads to conflict, and that is a situation where nobody wins these conflicts. That's what's already happening right now. Everyone is kind of already at that point where they've already fallen on the sword, and so therefore, why would we try to keep doing that? So, that's why things are not only about to change whether we want them to or not. It's not always a bad thing when these things are happening, even if it does feel like it's bad at the time. Because the situation is, once you see the end result, you finally see what all the fuss was about, and that maybe it was all worth it in the end. Ah, there we go. Last card, Judgment. That is what this is about, that same discernment that I keep talking about, but also it's one of those situations where you're willing to be the fool and walk on this path. The thing is, it's okay if we stumble. So therefore, understand that, and therefore everything is happening in due course. So, this is the end of one cycle to the beginning of another. So, I do wish you all a happy new year. If I do not actually make another video, I probably will though. But, just kind of look at it like that. A new end of an era, the end of a world as we once knew it, but the beginning of a new transition. But it's not always having to be so love and light, but it is one of those situations where it also doesn't have to be full of pain and darkness. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.